Hey everyone, how's it going? My name is Richard Moglen, and welcome back to a weekly Watchlist video sponsored by MarketSmith. And this week, I mostly focus on names that are showing some form of relative strength versus the indexes and other growth stocks because we are currently correcting on the major indexes. And I'm not necessarily looking to act on any of these ideas next week. I mostly just wait and see mode and waiting for things to tighten up, become less volatile, and form up proper setups. But these are some of the names I'm watching into next week. So there are some themes here. Home builders, semis are particularly strong. There's a bunch of those names that are holding up above their 21 EMAs, as well as some other names on this list. And also transportation, Zim, SPLK, those are also looking pretty interesting. So with that said, let's go through these charts pretty quickly. And let me know down below any ideas that you have that are holding up really nicely versus the rest of the market and could be the potential leaders going forward. And I'd like to remind everybody that even though we are correcting, you have to stay vigilant. You have to keep noting relative strength because this is really when the money is made during the correction. You have to note the strength, the evidence that some stocks could be the future leaders, and that hard work will pay off once the uptrend resumes and we get a nice, basically another nice run in these growth names. So with that said, let's run through these ideas and start with BLD. So overall, this is a home builder, not really one of the names I like to trade, but it is showing relative strength, holding up above the 21 EMA. A little bit of volatility here, but I like this push off the lows here and forming a little bit of a flag below these levels. Decent earnings estimates as well. And let's show that ownership and fund ownership. Decent increase, nothing explosive here, but an overall decent set of fundamentals. And you also have the overall group ranked 22 out of 197. Moving on, we've got BNTX. Everybody knows this company, and this base is 100% flawed. This is kind of where it broke down here, but we're moving back up into the supply level, but we are showing some relative strength. Obviously, this is kind of a news-driven name, so keep that in mind. But I'm kind of watching to see if it can push through these levels on volume and really show another push upwards because this is maybe a late-stage base. It has come quite a ways in a very short amount of time. So this definitely is a little bit flawed, but nevertheless, it is showing some forms of relative strength. Overall, you've got great annual earnings for this year, not so much for next year. That estimate revision is down, but you've got a huge growth in fund ownership and two high-quality funds in this stock. Moving on, we've got EDR, and this is the kind of company that owns the WWE, I believe. And you've got great earnings, sales the past 2 quarters. Great estimates for this year and really nice fall through in 2022 as well. Nice growth in fund ownership going from 2 to about 100 as it kind of forms out its first longer term base here. And what I'm watching for is a push through this level on volume. You've got the standard pivot up at 31.70 and 100%. This is pretty volatile. I would love to see it kind of tighten up here and really make a push towards these highs. Next up, we've got GFS, and this is a semiconductor recent IPO that's actually pretty liquid, so that also is a huge plus. Not really any defined structure here. I'd love to see kind of it pull back to 60, form a nice U shape here, maybe form a cup and handle of some sort. But you've got really nice earnings and sales the most recent quarter, and you're supposed to have a breakout year in terms of annual EPS in 2022, which is big. No real fun information just yet, but let's go ahead and click this button. And you've got 131 funds already in this stock. So that is GFS, definitely a young IPO to watch, and the overall semiconductor group. And there's many industry groups that contain semiconductors. All of those are pretty much acting really well at this point. And moving on, we've got the king of the semiconductors, NVDA, definitely a market leader, and it is so far holding up above the 21 EMA. But keep in mind, this obviously could completely break down if the market continues to do so and undercut 300. These levels. So once again, I'm just kind of watching this one to see if there's a setup that emerges. But overall, very solid earnings, sales margins, estimates, fund ownership, and a whole bunch of high quality funds invested into this stock. PFE also showing relative strength, moving up above the stage 2 pivot and going over to a monthly chart. You can see it's just peaking up above this important level and going back to the daily. Looking at the earnings, sales margins, you can see acceleration the past 4 quarters in pretty much all of those categories. Great estimates for this year, some fall through in 2022, and decent growth in fund ownership and one high quality fund invested into this stock. Next up, we've got PUBM, which had its highest volume ever here, and this is selling off a little bit. You have a downside reversal or actually a failed breakout here, then fall through to the downside on this day, but did have a nice upside reversal on Friday when the overall market was selling off pretty hard. Overall, nice earnings sales margins, great estimates for this year, not so much fall through in 2022 expected, and you've got an okay amount of funds. I would like to see this continue to increase over the coming quarters, but you've got one high quality fund invested in the stock, and this could be just starting a potential move up the right-hand side towards all-time highs and start that kind of institutional advance phase. So that is PUBM. Next up, we've got Roblox, another stock potentially just moving out the right-hand side and starting a longer-term move. Definitely very volatile and negative bars here, fall through to the downside here, but it is holding the 21 EMA as well as this prior pivot. So showing a little bit of relative strength, but 100%, I would love to see it kind of tighten up, breakout, tighten up again, breakout, tighten up again, and then you could most likely have a really nice move through these prior highs. So it needs a little bit of time, maybe a few weeks to form out this base, but based on the price move, the huge volume coming in right here on these breakout moves, on these breakout days, I definitely want to watch going forward. I like the steady increase in the average of the volume. Moving on, we've got SPLK, and overall transportation was showing a little bit of relative strength here. Great earnings sales margins the past 3 quarters. Great estimates for this year. Very little fall through expected in 2022, so that's definitely a knock against it. And not much growth in terms of fund ownership, but I'm watching for a breakthrough this pivot on volume and definitely showing relative strength late last week, as you can see from the relative strength line. Next up, we've got Snow, which did have a very volatile few weeks here, and you can see it sold off really hard before a gap up on earnings, but it is holding that 50 SMA, and it was an inside day on Friday, but I would love to see it kind of tighten up here around 350 and break out to the upside, but we'll have to see what happens. There's another one within a really nice overall pattern here, maybe a cup and handle forming here on the weekly chart, but we'll have to see. Definitely you want to see it advance from this prior week, and if it kind of leaks below these lows, definitely it needs to reset and form an entire new base at this point. Moving on, we've got TNDM, another one with a pretty nice weekly close here and a nice push on Thursday and Friday, showing relative strength into the end of the week. Great earnings and sales the past 2 quarters, really strong estimates for 2022, and I think that's really important, and estimate revisions are up. A nice increase in fund ownership and 4 high quality funds invested in this stock. And overall, I'm watching for some fall through here and maybe an advance towards this 143 pivot. Moving on, we've got WIRE, great earnings sales margins the past 4 quarters, great estimates for this year, and not really any fall through in 2022. It's supposed to decrease 56%, but estimate revisions are up. And looking at the fund ownership, nothing much to say here. And basically looking at the chart, I really like the strong advance, very linear as well. And I'm watching for some type of consolidation here and then a breakout of a flag or through the 150 level on volume. And overall, this is a potential high tight flag setup or type setup. It's not quite the standard 100% flagpole, but we'll have to see what happens. You are seeing some increase in red bars here, but overall price is not broken down and we're holding that 21 EMA. Moving on, we've got YELL. This is not quite as liquid as the other names on this list, so keep that in mind. There's more at play on the overall chart, which is a strong potential high tight flag breaking through these levels. Great earnings this past quarter. Estimate revisions are up. Not so much to say in terms of fund ownership, but looking at the chart, really nice push off these lows and pulling back less than 20%. So definitely actionable if it tightens up and pushes through these levels. I know a lot of people really like to play these high tight flag setups. Last on the list, we've got Zim, and you've got great earnings sales margins the past 4 quarters. Great estimates for this year, and it is supposed to decrease in terms of annual EPS in 2022, although estimate revisions are up. And look at the fund ownership, you can see it's steadily increasing over the past 3 quarters. Overall, this held up pretty well, holding that 21 EMA and forming a stage 2 cup with handle at this point, and watching for a definitive break on volume through these levels. So overall, this is kind of my relative strength focus list going into next week. Once again, I'm not necessarily looking to act on any of these ideas. I think you get really easily chopped up in this environment, but I'll be watching these ones very carefully to see kind of how they develop over the course of the next few weeks. If you have any ideas that you think really look good, let me know down below in the comment section below. And if you did enjoy this video, please go ahead and leave a like down below and subscribe if you're new to the channel. And I'll see you guys in future videos. Thanks.